I'm a charlatan, a fraud, a hack, a wannabe, a wood carving cosplayer, as you might say. And I think I'm in a common situation a lot of woodworkers are out there, in that we find a niche or interest that we have interest in, and we dive deep into it. We buy the books, we buy the magazines, we watch the videos, and then we start buying tools and accumulating tools, because when we have all the knowledge and all the information, we can get started and we can become whatever we want to be, right? That's the fallacy going on, right? Well, I've been living one of those falsehoods in front of y'all for what, going on publicly 10 years now, because I always fancied myself a bit of a carver, a spoon carver, or something like that. I mean, we've talked about in videos me using spoon carving tools all over the place. I have an entire shelf in my office filled with spoon carving books and magazines. If you go to my Instagram news feed, 3/4 of it is fancy spoons like that. And it's been that way for at least 6 years now. And in fact, over those years, I've been accumulating tools. In fact, right now, I've started accumulating these little diamond plates so that I can take a sharpening kit on the road with me, you know, going from 600 all the way up to 3,000. So I can sharpen and then grab a piece of leather, hone my knives, right? To become the perfect spoon carver. It's just such a romantic idea to me to be able to take a small bag of tools, a little bit of wood that I could probably find on the trail if I wanted to, sit down by a creek and make something that lasts somebody a lifetime and was pretty to look at too, right? Yeah, well, ask me how many spoons I've carved or even started to carve, because I've never really finished a decent one or even a halfway decent one in my life. And I probably started 5 in the last 5 years. Well, I'm kind of getting into the situation now where I'm going to be forced away from my shop for a little bit, and it would be nice to have that romantic notion and be able to take this little bag of tools with some spare woods and carve some spoons. Unfortunately, my tools, I've had them for so long. And here's the funny thing about it. All these tools I've been pulling out of the bag, you've seen me use in videos a lot. In fact, several years I've recommended these Sloyd knives that I use for spoons. It's one of those things that you pick up the spoon and the tool, and even though it's dedicated to spoon carvers, because of the unique design of it, you find more applications for it. So I've been using these tools, just not what I picture myself using them for. And I have a complete set of axes. Yeah, don't kill me. It's retail therapy over 10 years. You know, you say you want to get better at something, so you buy the tools. Well, I did a deep dive, bought 3 sets of axes from Robin Wood. Actually, even if you're not a carver, stuff like that, I highly recommend you following a lot of his information. He's over in England. He started a tool company because he couldn't find the tools out there. He's really done a lot. He and his entire family have done a lot for the craft. But, you know, they make them in England. I've never even used these, but I bought them like 3 or 4 years ago. And just because this one's tight right now, but one of mine, like this one right here, is a tad bit loose. Can you see that? Just a tad bit loose. And if you see how they are built, you know, he's got the wedges on them. They shape these down, and then slide them up, and they kind of scrape their way up to get fitted perfectly. Because, you know, can you see those shavings coming up from the side right there? A little bit of gaps here and there, but the key thing is right here. Any kind of gap up front, that's what's causing the looseness. The same for this one right here. This is his original design where he used metal wedges. This one right here is more traditional, where if you see, the wedge goes along this way. So basically, the wood gets scraped coming up and then wedged out sideways to pinch sideways. But there's nothing really pinching this way, and that's the movement I have. So I want to tighten up the heads of these two axes right here. Now, according to my book knowledge, I know how to do that one. According to my experience, it is basic joinery. But, you know, it's one of those things. I've never done it on a axe, so it can't be that much different, right? Let's find out today. So first things first, we have basically a mortise and a tenon. I have the shoulder of a tenon. I am noticing that it is not quite even all the way around, and because it's been shaved down a little bit, some fibers coming up in here, maybe forming a pivot point eventually. So I think the first thing we need to do on both of these is clean up the face of the tenon. And I'm going to use my older knife. I don't want to mess up my nicer one. I'm just going to slightly shave off those fibers right there and make sure that they don't fall into the shoulder. So next up, we are going to seat that tenon onto the mortise, and we don't want to bang on the mallet like that. We want to use physics. You know, something in motion tends to stay in motion, something at rest tends to stay at rest. Well, that's something pretty heavy compared to the stick right here. So if we were to bang the stick, the head will actually want to stay still in space, and we can actually drive this straight down because of the force. And this is one of those situations where you kind of want to hit it with something flat, not something round, because we want to hit it hard. It's not like just carving, letter carving or something like that, or cutting out dovetails. So this, because it's rounded, it's going to focus the force, and that could seriously dent, but more likely split the wood. So real quickly, just let's and that right there, that tightened up the head. It's not wiggling anymore. Do the same to the other one. Right now, wiggly. He did change. This is the new design. This is his original design. He changed the end of the mallet to make it easier for it to do this kind of work. Yeah, that's a lot tighter. In fact, it went down even deeper on this one, the original axe line, and shaved a little bit more out. Which means, because we did that one, the tenons actually got driven out a little bit. So we need to hammer them down a little bit more. This one has metal tenons, so I'm going to use a metal hammer. Wedges, I mean. And now go back and do the same thing. Go back and forth until it's tight. Now I want you to notice on both of them, this one with the wedge going this way, there's a gap right here, and there's a little gap right there. So that's what could cause future wiggliness, so to speak. So what I want to do is, just as this wedge right here split the wood up and down, I want to make a little slit about 1/4 inch up either side. And in joinery, we call this foxtailing. I'm going to induce a split there. I'm going to drive another wedge in here and here to cause these two to spread out this way. On this one, I'm just going to do it one time because these metal wedges kind of, it's a last-ditch effort to save those. Worst case scenario, I just make myself a new handle on this one. So real quickly, I'm going to wedge this axe up. Note, you really shouldn't be doing what I'm doing, I'm about to pound down on your screws, but I'm not going to be hitting it that hard. And one nice thing about moccasin vices, They are fixed in back, but the fronts are actually oblong, so it can kind of crank sideways a little bit. So basically you can tighten one side down, and then you have leverage on this side. You can actually see this pine board is flexing to grab that really hard. Now I'm just going to start cracks on those wedges. Make sure the bevel is going the way I want it to move. Come back over, give it a nice tap, and then move over a little bit. Make sure you don't hit steel. And I'm just getting the crack started right now. I can't really go too far with it. I'm probably going to have to resharpen this chisel because I just hit the axe head a little bit. Next up, you want to go to your stash of projects you've never completed and pull out a piece of wood that is harder than the wood in the handle. I've got a piece of rock maple right here, and the key thing is you just want to cut off a small section that is going to be long enough for an oversized wedge. Now the thing is, you don't want it to be too long because it'll tend to break when you pound on it. Next up, I want to split it. And I'm doing this for no other reason that I don't know how to guarantee that I'm following the grain without splitting. Doesn't matter how much you eyeball it and look at it and stuff like that, you're always off for some reason. This forces the grain to break along its path. And this is stuff you do if you, even in wood turning, if you need to make a very long spindle, well, you split it out before you put it on the lathe. It looks a lot rougher, but you get better results. So I need 2 wedges. So once I've got one split, I can almost guarantee that the next split is just going to be going exactly the same direction. Now check that out. Here's a first split. It's all a little bit wonky. Here's a second split. Notice it's perfectly parallel, or pretty parallel on both sides, because it went with the grain. And this board even had some twist in it, and it included that twist in the split. So now that I've got one good one, this one was sacrificial just to establish the grain. Let's go ahead and do it again. Another invention of mine to make me a better spoon carver. Notice not a single cut on it. This will probably be the first time I ever use it. So here we go. I just want to make that little wedge. Come down on both sides a little bit. There we go. Got my 2 wedges. Refine them a little bit. Spoon carving techniques. Yeah. Book knowledge and a little bit of work, but again, I've never actually made a complete spoon. I use this stuff on a lot of other projects, including getting the nubs off of the bottoms of my bowls. Works great for that. And now I need to set the width. And I'll just cut this off on my bandsaw. And now for the moment of truth. Does the book smarts worth? Once again, you're going to want to get a flat mallet, but maybe not a behemoth. I'm just going to lay it down on that pre-established crack. I'm going to lightly tap it first to get it going. And then the more it gets seated, the more I can hammer hard. Gonna reestablish the crack. There we go. flush saw them, though I don't think anybody would notice it. But I do feel a need of cleaning up a little bit. So what do you think? Does wood knowledge transfer from one branch of the craft to the other? I mean, technically, an axe head is just a Morrison tenon. But it ain't wiggling now. Maybe a hold up for one spoon. What do you think? Hope you enjoyed this. Picked up a few tips or tricks right here. But remember, it's one of those things that once you start building your knowledge down one deep rabbit hole of really what you enjoy, I'm willing to bet what you learn there will transfer elsewhere. Even if it's just something you have in your head for a long time and it takes you 10 years to get started on. Y'all be safe, have fun, and remember, it's always worth the effort to learn, create, and share with others. Okay, for today's bonus, I'm going to revisit a book. This is a book that I recommended probably a decade ago when I was doing my daily tips video series. And I got kind of lambasted for it, and I didn't realize that it was out of print. So I had recommended a book that nobody could get, or at least could get on the open market easily. Well, luckily it is back in print. And the reason why I'm recommending it to is because, hey, we're talking about spoon carving right now. And this is a book that I return to time and time again. And I've read recently that it's now kind of considered the Bible among spoon carvers. And that's a Swedish carving techniques with Wille Sundqvist. You'll probably recognize his son is publishing books now too, but this original one is probably the best I've ever come across, and it's one I return to time and time again. A lot of what I see out there ends up more being like a coffee table book or picture books or something like that, just kind of skimming the surface. This one dives deep into a lot of techniques of a lot of different stuff out there. Well worth the time to read, and it is something you will return to time and time again. You can just see all the pages I've got dog-eared and notes on looking through this thing. I'll put a link down below to the Amazon, which is an affiliate thing, but you can also find it other places, such as some of the woodworking retailers out there.